Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. Our country's police chiefs say they want to meet with Canada's premiers to discuss ongoing drug and gang violence in our cities. Alberta Premier Daniel Smith explains why the UCP is still considering a defamation lawsuit against Canada's public broadcaster. And grade 2 students at Lethbridge Elementary School held a special ceremony on Tuesday as they gear up for Green Shirt Day on April the 7th.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Alberta Premier Daniel Smith says she will no longer speak about her involvement in how COVID-19 court cases are being prosecuted. Smith says the UCP is considering a defamation lawsuit against the public broadcaster. Smith wants the CBC to retract its story in January that stated a member of her staff sent emails to the Alberta Crown Prosecution Service challenging how it was handling cases from COVID-19 protests at the Coutts border crossing.
There's been a great deal of inaccurate, misleading, and likely defamatory reporting about my discussions with justice officials regarding amnesty for COVID prosecutions. I have been clear that neither I nor anyone within my staff have contacted any Crown prosecutors, as has been alleged. Indeed, Alberta's Crown Prosecution Service has confirmed this to be true. To continue saying or suggesting otherwise is malicious, as this matter is now likely to be subject of legal defamation proceedings. I will not be commenting about it further, as per the advice of counsel.
Last week, in a leaked cell phone recording, Premier Smith is heard offering to help Calgary pastor Arthur Pawlowski in his criminal case related to his involvement in the Coutts blockade last year. The Premier is heard telling Pawlowski the charges against him were based on political motives. Political reporter Brian Lilly says both the CBC and Premier Daniel Smith need to get their ducks in a row or it could become problematic for both parties.
If CBC doesn't have their bases covered, they'll be in trouble. It's Smith's problem is that recording with Pastor Pawlowski where she talks about, well, I've raised this with prosecutors. I can't remember the exact terms that she used, but she made it sound like she was talking to the prosecutors. If she did, that's going to put her in a bad spot. How does she explain away that? Did she go up to the line? Did she cross the line? These are all the questions, because if judge can find that she crossed the line, then that's a defense for CBC. If she didn't cross the line, then CBC's in trouble.
Brian Lilly will also have details of how Canadian troops training Ukrainian fighters in Poland are having to pay for their own meals right now. Watch the full interview coming up in the second half of our program. The Alberta government announced more funding to help develop sustainable year-round tourism experiences. Parks, Forestry and Tourism Minister Todd Loewen says Travel Alberta will receive $10 million over the next couple of years to develop sustainable year-round experiences in regions outside of Alberta's most popular destinations. Loewen says the funds will be used to increase awareness to some of the lesser-known tourism destinations.
We must expand Alberta's visitor economy by providing enjoyable, enriching tourism experiences in rural Alberta beyond our big cities and the eastern slopes. By spreading out demand, we spread economic and social benefits to all regions of the province. The environmentally responsible development of new and unique tourism products, tourism infrastructure initiatives, and visitor programming, and community investment that empowers destination management organizations leading strategic initiatives within our local and rural areas today. Through these efforts, we're enabling Alberta operators to increase the breadth and appeal of our province's rural tourism offerings and cast a wider net to attract visitors.
Family members of Tia Blood were in Lethbridge Court on Tuesday reading victim impact statements regarding the devastating loss of their family member. Tia Blood was found dead in October of last year just outside of Lethbridge. Hunter Alexander Frank pleaded guilty to one count of manslaughter on Tuesday. Cara Blood, the sister of Tia Blood, says it's been extremely difficult having to deal with the loss of their loved one. She also talked about what kind of a person Tia was.
Our family has been sifting through messages from her community that she created, and the common message is that she was a person of safety. She had a way of telling you what you needed to hear, but in the most gentle of ways. She had this way of connecting with anybody, and she went above and beyond for her peers. I've received countless messages of saying she had taken my kids to the clinic. She has, helped me buy groceries. She has, brought my kids this place, wherever they needed to go.
2 more drug dealers have been taken off the streets in Medicine Hat following a big drug bust. Alert's organized crime unit says following a 5-month investigation, 51-year-old Sean Baker and 47-year-old Jeremy Seigers were arrested. 3 properties were raided last Saturday with police confiscating 411 grams of cocaine, 132 grams of magic mushrooms, 30 grams of methamphetamine, 140 pills of oxycodone, a buffing agent, and over $38,000 in cash. Police also seized 2 vehicles. Both Baker and Seegers face various charges, including drug trafficking and possession, and will appear in court to answer to those charges. Lethbridge police say last year, out of the 37,000 calls they received, 99.5% were resolved without any use of force. Force is defined when there's an injury to the subject, an officer or bystander, a firearm or less lethal weapon is displayed, or there's a discharge of a firearm. It does not include cooperative handcuffing or escort techniques that are used. Police say the 0.5% of cases where force was used, it involved 231 subjects. They say there were no fatalities or injuries requiring a hospital stay. Of the subjects involved, 24 sustained minor injuries, and with respect to the police officers, there were 14 sustained injuries. The report also said that no firearms were discharged in 2022. 3 people were stabbed and a 4th person was assaulted following an attempted robbery in downtown Calgary on Monday. Police say all 4 were attacked by the same man who was trying to steal a purse. The injuries of the victims range from minor to serious, but all are in stable condition. Police have taken a man into custody following the attacks and are asking for help with their investigation. If you came into contact with the suspect, you're being asked to call Crime Stoppers right away at 1-800-222-8477. Police chiefs are sounding the alarm and want to meet with Canada's premiers. They say they need to look at how to better protect Canadians, police officers, and combat a spike in guns, gangs, drugs, and violence. The president of the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police, Danny Smythes, made the comments in a letter to Manitoba Premier Heather Stephenson, the chair of the Council of the Federation. Smythe says the dangers of the job, combined with intense politicization of policing, threaten the ability of police to safely and ethically ensure public safety. The grandparent scam now has a new twist to it, as artificial intelligence is now being used to defraud seniors. According to the Better Business Bureau, criminals are now using AI to clone voices and to steal cash from would-be victims. Wes LaFortune, the communications and media specialist for the Southern Alberta BBB, says there are ways you can spot the scam.
What you want to do is really validate the information, check out, call the person themselves, hang up for the scammer, call the person, the phone number that they have, see how they are, validate where they are, get some more information or call their parents, whoever. The other thing a lot of people are doing is using like a code word or code phrase in their families, so that if somebody contacts you asking for money and they don't know this code word or code phrase, then it will obviously raise a serious red flag.
LaFortune says the Better Business Bureau is urging consumers to talk to family members about this scam so they can be prepared and avoid becoming a victim. For a full list of tips on how to best avoid this scam, be sure to visit our website, bridgecitynews.ca. Well, it was a little chillier across much of southwestern Alberta earlier today. Jeanette Rocher is in now with an early peek at the forecast. Jeanette, fortunately, that mercury will be climbing by quite a bit this week as we make our way to Easter Sunday.
Yeah, that's so true, Hal. I can't wait for that. It's going to climb, and then it's going to climb some more. Looking back to today, though, it was a bit chillier than what we were expecting. I don't even think we reached our daytime high of 2 degrees last I checked. It was still in the minuses. As we get into this evening, though, overnight low of -12. With the wind chill, going to feel more like -18. That's very chilly for this time of year. Also, overnight fog developing. It should dissipate by the morning as we get into Wednesday, looking at a daytime high of 6 degrees. Hopefully we reach it, making way also for some sunshiny skies, and that should last all through the week as we get into the double digits and even closer to 20 degrees as we get nearer to that weekend. I'll be back later in the show to give you all those details. Hal?
Great. Thanks so much, Jeanette. Grades 1 and 2 students at Dr. Gerald B. Proby Elementary School in Lethbridge held a special assembly for their peers Tuesday morning ahead of Green Shirt Day this week. As BCN's Angela Stewart explains now, the assembly consisted of a unique presentation with the hopes that the topic of organ donation will be an easier conversation for kids to take home.
The idea of organ donation is not your everyday topic of conversation because it's rather a tricky discussion to navigate through.
Sometimes our organs break down and don't work properly.
To help make that tough talk easier to understand, these elementary school students put on a presentation for their classmates during a Green Shirt Day assembly.
We've shown that you can have that in an elementary school and not make it threatening or to make it a scary subject.
Using an online educational program called the WEEKNIGHTS, the grade 1 and 2 students at Dr. Gerald B. Proby Elementary School were able to show and teach their peers, as well as parents, about the different organs in our body and the importance of organ donation.
That's what we want to happen from this, is for kids to go home, talk to their parents, and just have a conversation. Not necessarily making that decision to be a donor, but just a conversation.
Bernadine Boulay, a grade 2 teacher at the school, says she's heard from many students who say they are inspired to become an organ donor.
It's interesting how many students come up to me afterwards and say, I'm going to be an organ donor when I grow up. I want to be that. I want to be like Logan.
Since his unexpected passing in 2018 after the Humboldt Broncos bus crash, Boulay's son Logan has been an inspiration to many in Canada to sign up as organ donors. His father, Toby Boulay, says the conversation of being an organ donor shouldn't just be an annual discussion.
The conversation has to happen all the time. Logan had the conversation with me in August of 2017 after Rick passed. He just told me, and that was the conversation. So the conversations need to be ongoing with your family. Be inspired by anybody.
Lethbridge will recognize Green Shirt Day on Friday, April 7th. For Bridge City News, I'm Angela Stewart.
The Lethbridge Hurricanes returned home to the NMAC Centre as the club prepares for Game 3 in their best-of-7 affair against the Moose Jaw Warriors. The Canes are down 2-0 in their WHL series. Canes assistant coach Ryan Aisman says he's been encouraging his players to not lose their identity of who the Canes are as a team.
We play a heavy game. We're really structured and detailed. We play a team game, and we have to make sure that we're playing together. That'll be big. Our forecheck game is always going to be a key, and how we track and get above pucks has always been our biggest thing. Now we just have to find a way to have some fun with the game and find ways to capitalize on our opportunities.
It's been a while, COVID, and last year was a tough matchup, and I haven't won a playoff game in a couple of years now, so. Our team's focus is just on winning that first game. We just got to win. We just got to win that first game and get that momentum and carry it into tomorrow for sure.
We're excited to be home. It's a great rink. We've had some really good crowds as of late. The rink has been really loud, and we play really good here. We're comfortable. We've had a good home record all year. That sense of home, I think, will definitely motivate us and have us come out with a lot of jump tonight after a couple days off.
Game 4 between the Hurricanes and the Warriors goes Thursday night at the NMAC Centre here in Lethbridge. A vote from Lethbridge City Council this afternoon will see that the Alberta municipalities advocate for the Alberta government to make sure provincial allocations of capital funding for school construction covers all costs of the bills. Deputy Mayor John Middleton Hope says this was an important motion to bring forward to Council.
Certainly not only to those municipalities that are experiencing this pressure, but to those municipalities that perhaps haven't experienced the pressure yet. Some of them are smaller and maybe just haven't had that kind of experience, but it ties up substantial dollars on the municipality side that we could be using for a variety of different initiatives. I know that Ms. Mearns from Build is here today, and they have provided also a letter in support of this initiative to move this forward.
Lethbridge City Council voted unanimously on the proposed resolution. Voters in Prince Edward Island delivered a decisive majority to the incumbent Conservatives after an election campaign was dominated by debate over health care. Premier Dennis King's Tories were elected in 22 of the province's 27 ridings. The Liberals, meanwhile, won 3 seats and the Green Party only 2.
We're going to continue to work on improving access to health care, lowering the cost of living, building more housing, meeting the realities of climate change, educating the next generation of Islanders, strengthening our economy and broadening our prosperity, and making Prince Edward Island the best place in the world to live, work, and raise a family. We're ready to move this province forward. We're ready to lead and continue to lead with humility and with kindness. We're ready to work day and night to ensure that we have the best days that lie ahead of us.
He is strong and ready to go. That is what one of former U.S. President Donald Trump's lawyers had to say about his client outside of a Manhattan courthouse on Tuesday. Trump pleaded not guilty to 34 felony counts of falsifying business records arising from a hush money payment scheme to an adult film star during the 2016 election campaign. The plea came during a history-making arraignment with Trump, who became the first former president in U.S. history to face criminal prosecution. Well, it was cool and cloudy in Lethbridge today, but fortunately the mercury will be climbing by quite a bit this week. A full look at the weather picture is coming up. You know, some regions in southwestern Alberta saw a few more flurries again today, but not to worry, the meltdown shall begin fairly soon. Jeanette Rocher is in now with all of the weather details. Jeanette, a lot of the snow should be melting as we make our way to Good Friday and then Easter Sunday.
Yes, after Wednesday, we're seeing all double digits. Look at that. We're seeing a high of 6 degrees for Wednesday, mainly sunny skies. That sunshine remaining all throughout the week. 11 degrees on Thursday. We're looking at a high of 15 on Friday, back to 12 on Saturday. And look at that. For Easter Sunday, high of 21 degrees. Lovely. And then into Easter Monday, we're looking at a high of 18 degrees. So that is definitely more like it. I wonder if we're going to break some records there. Average high for this time of year, 10 degrees. Average low, -3. 26 was our high temperature on this day back in 1944, and in 1975 it was a chilly -18. 7:02, that's when the sun rose this morning, and look at that. That sunset at 8:07 this evening, giving us 13 hours and 5 minutes of daylight. On the west coast, not too bad at all. 9 degrees for a high in Victoria, under partly cloudy skies, mainly sunny skies in Vancouver as well. 8 degrees for a high there. 30% chance of flurries in the morning in Edmonton with a high of 2 degrees and a high of 6 degrees in Calgary with lovely sunny skies as well. As we look to the rest of the prairies, Saskatoon sitting at a high of -6, -4 for a high in Regina. Also looking at that -22 for a wind chill in the morning. Winnipeg could see 10 centimeters of snow and blowing snow tomorrow as they're bracing themselves for that major spring storm event. That Colorado low is pushing its way into southern Manitoba, looking at bringing 15 to 20 centimeters of snow, but only 10 centimeters for Winnipeg, also looking at 40 to 60K winds there. So with that blowing snow, with all of that, those heavy flurries there. Speaking of heavy rains expected in Toronto tomorrow, looking at 5 to 10 millimeters and also expecting some thunderstorms. High of 17 degrees though. High of 0 in both Ottawa and Montreal. Both of those cities looking at freezing rain warning. Could see 2 to 4 millimeters of ice pellets, or centimeters rather, of ice pellets in Ottawa, and also Montreal looking at that freezing rain as well. Fredericton looking at a high of 3 degrees, partly cloudy skies. Could see some freezing rain in the evening though. Same thing for Halifax. Looking at a mainly sunny day, but could see some freezing rain in the evening. High of 4 degrees. Tomorrow, -1, the expected high in Charlottetown, and 2 degrees, the high in St. John's. Could see some rain mixed with some flurries and up to 60K winds on the coast there. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
Today's weather report is brought to you by Ridge Utilities, providing competitive rates for electricity, natural gas, and internet, while investing back in communities across southern Alberta.
If you booked a flight this spring or summer on WestJet Airlines, you'll want to pay close attention to this next story. According to the Airline Pilots Association, talks between WestJet and the Pilots Union have dragged on since September. Members say if the airline does not come to the table to negotiate a better contract with its pilots fairly soon, a strike could take place by May the 16th. That's about a week before the Victoria Day-long weekend, which often kicks off the summer travel season. Captain Bernard Lewell is a WestJet pilot and heads the ALPA Canada's WestJet contingent. He says an internal video from the company did not make the situation look very promising.
I do believe our CEO tried to drive a wedge between the pilots and the flight attendants of the other groups a couple weeks ago in an internal video where he said he would rather park planes than pay the pilots what they're asking for. He was trying to drive a wedge between the pilots and the other working groups. It didn't work. No, the flight attendants are fully in support of us. The last thing you want to do is have that sitting on the tarmac. You need that in the air generating revenue, and that's what the pilots want as well.
Lewell says WestJet pilots are some of the lowest paid in North America. In addition to a higher wage, the pilots are seeking a better work-life balance, such as having more time at home with their families. Oil sands giant Syncrude Canada has been charged in the death of a worker north of Fort McMurray. The Alberta government said on June 6th of 2021 in Fort McKay, a worker was operating an excavator to build a berm when the bank slumped into the water. It says the cab of the excavator was fully submerged and the worker drowned. The company faces charges including failure to ensure the health and safety of the worker and failure to comply with Energy Safety Canada safety rules. The Syncrude project is a joint venture that includes Suncor, Imperial Oil, Sinopec Oil Sands Partnership, and CNOOC Oil Sands Canada. Canada's office vacancy rate hit an all-time high in the first quarter of this year. That's according to a report from real estate firm CBRE. It says the country's overall vacancy rate amounted to 17.7%. Toronto's downtown vacancy rate reached 15.3%, the highest level that Canada's largest office market has seen since 1995. Meanwhile, the downtown office vacancy rate in Vancouver rose to its highest level since 2004. Ottawa and Montreal also posted all-time high downtown vacancy rates. Things are not much improved in Calgary either. CBRE says tech companies right-sizing their businesses and rethinking their spaces are to blame for many of the vacancy rate increases. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was down 2 points on the day to finish at 20,275. The Dow was down 198 points to 33,402. The S&P 500 was down 23 on the day to 4,100, and the Nasdaq was down 63 points to 12,126. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up 56 cents to $80.98 U.S. per barrel. Natural gas was down a cent to $2.09 U.S. Gold was up a cent to $2,022.44 U.S. an ounce, and silver was even on the day at $25.01 U.S. an ounce. Feed wheat is at $11.57 per bushel, barley's at $9.17, canola's at $17, and corn is at $10.72 per bushel. Live cattle were down 53 cents to $167.60. Feeder cattle were down $1 to $197.95, and lean hogs were down $2.30 to $72.23. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to $74.38 U.S. Recapping one of our top stories, the Alberta government announced more funding to help develop sustainable year-round tourism experiences. Parks, Forestry and Tourism Minister Todd Loewen says Travel Alberta will receive $10 million over the next 2 years to develop sustainable year-round experiences in regions outside of Alberta's most popular destinations. The federal government says even though the carbon tax went up on April the 1st, Canadians will be getting more money back in their bank accounts. Now, the parliamentary budget officer and political reporter Brian Lilly both say that's not true. Mr. Lilly will have more details for us momentarily. Listen, if you see news happening in your community, be sure to drop us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. We'd love to hear from you.
Here's today's Bridge City News Community Calendar. A team of community-minded business students from the Lethbridge College have organized a fundraising event to help fight hunger in our city. This free event, Wheels for Meals Car Show, is taking place Sunday, April 9th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Lethbridge College, Lot P. Attendees are encouraged to bring cash or food donations. Enjoy great-looking vehicles, delicious food and prizes, with all proceeds being donated to the Lethbridge Food Bank. So come on out and help support a worthy cause. Big Brothers Big Sisters in Lethbridge is looking for volunteers to mentor children and youth in their various programs. Volunteers commit to one visit per week for 1 year. They have many kids that are looking for a big brother or sister. Make a difference in a child's life and start something big. To apply, visit lethbridge.bigbrothersbigsisters.ca, and for more information, call 403-328-9355. And that's today's Bridge City News Community Calendar.
Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is threatening to sue the CBC over their reporting of her interactions with Crown prosecutors. Now, to chat about this in a little more detail is political reporter and Sun columnist Brian Lilly, who joins us once again from Toronto. Brian, the claim, which the Premier denies, is that she interfered with cases where people were charged under COVID-19 restrictions to get matters dropped, including a conversation she had with controversial street preacher Arthur Pawlowski. How difficult will it be for either side to really prove their case?
It could be extremely difficult for CBC to prove their case because they need to show proof. And if you remember back to the original story, they said they were emails that they had seen, but they didn't have them. The government of Alberta says they searched through all the emails in the system of people who would have been involved, and they found nothing. Deleting emails in a government system like that would be illegal. So it would be conducting government business over of that sort over private email accounts. So, either in the inbox, the outbox, the sent folder, somewhere, there should have been email evidence. They say it's not there. So if that's true, if that shows up in court, CBC is in a very difficult position. Now, look, I'm sure, I hope for their sake that they had this vetted by a lawyer. That's what we have to do at The Sun. If we've got a controversial claim, it goes to the lawyer. It goes to pre-publication lawyer. And the lawyer looks and says, okay, where could you be sued successfully? Do you have your bases covered? If CBC doesn't have their bases covered, they'll be in trouble. It's Smith's problem is that recording with Pastor Pawlowski where she talks about, well, I've raised this with prosecutors. I can't remember the exact terms that she used, but she made it sound like she was talking to the prosecutors. If she did, that's going to put her in a bad spot. How does she explain away that? Did she go up to the line? Did she cross the line? These are all the questions, because if judge can find that she crossed the line, then that's a defense for CBC. If she didn't cross the line, then CBC's in trouble. So there are a lot of variables at play here. I'm not trying to find an escape, but it's going to be an interesting case. And a politician suing the media, that's not a regular occurrence here in Canada.
And we've got a provincial election just around the corner coming up May 29th. So depending upon how this plays out, may have an impact as well for the Conservative Party. Now, Brian, there's another lawsuit involving a high-profile story. Former Liberal MP, now independent, Han Dong, said he's suing Global News over their reporting about China's election interference and Dong's role in it. Do you think he really has a case here?
Well, he's being bold and going forward with this. What we have to see now is, does he actually follow through with the suit? He has issued a libel notice. He hasn't filed the actual, lawsuit, similar to Smith. And, back to that case, that'll be interesting. What does she sue on? Because in Dong's case, does he just sue over the claim that he had a conversation to stop the two Michaels from being released? Does he sue over everything? If he sues over everything, then he's opening himself up to discovery on the broader issue of, was he part of an election interference network orchestrated by the government of China through their consulate here in Toronto? If he just sues over the two Michaels thing, then that's a very narrow lawsuit. There's so many, again, just like the Smith thing, so many variables at play. And again, Global would have used their pre-publication lawyer to vet the story. This is unfortunately a regular occurrence for me. I've never been sued successfully, but regularly dealing with lawyers to make sure that your story is airtight, that you're not giving someone an opening to sue. I know some of the lawyers that Global have used. They're tough. They're thorough in how they do this. So Don is potentially opening himself up to an awful lot of embarrassing discovery if Global has anything. But watch for, in both cases, watch for how narrow or how wide the scope of the lawsuit is. What do they actually sue over?
Brian, Bill C-69, or the No More Pipelines Act, as former Alberta Premier Jason Kenney used to refer to it, is back in the news. The bill is now at the centre of a fight between the Ontario government and the Trudeau government. Ontario Premier Doug Ford even called Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault a piece of work. What's going on here?
Stephen Guilbeault's a piece of work, and he's picking fights with the Ontario government. Look, I covered Bill C-69 when it was going through. I think that was in 2018, and we talked about it at the time. It is a bill that most of us were focused on what it would do to the oil and gas industry. And it was really only the past few years as you watch how they're dealing with what's now called the Impact Assessment Act and the Impact Assessment Agency, that you see that this Trudeau government wants to use environmental law to put themselves in the middle of municipal zoning decisions in terms of where to build highways. And so in Ontario, what they're fighting over is a new highway that would go across the northwest side of the GTA, from Brampton up to Vaughan, for people that know the area. There's no reason for the federal government to be involved in a decision on where to place a highway. I mean, let's say Brooks was suddenly booming and the government decided, you know, we need a new highway from Lethbridge to Brooks. Why would the federal government get involved in that? Bill C-69, the Impact Assessment Act, allows them to do that. It allows them to get involved in saying, oh, you can't build houses there. We've decided that that's environmentally sensitive land. That's why, I guess it was a week or so ago, this was before the Supreme Court. The Alberta court, Alberta's top court, struck it down. And if you recall, in a 4-1 decision, the judges that struck it down said that this law is a wrecking ball to the constitutional order. And, you know, for people that didn't care because they don't like oil, the oil industry, they want to be clean environmentalists, they get rid of dirty oil. Well, this is a wrecking ball to the constitutional order. If you're going to have the federal government making decisions on where houses and roads can be placed that are purely within a provincial jurisdiction, then you have just rewritten the Constitution with one act. So I'm hopeful that the Supreme Court strikes this down, upholds the Alberta decision, and tells the federal government, look, you can have a say in the environment, shared jurisdiction, but you can't control everything using environmental law, which is what Guilbeault is trying to do.
Let's see how that plays out. Brian, much to our chagrin, the carbon tax went up April 1st, making it more expensive to heat our homes, fill up our vehicles. Now, the feds still say that Canadians will get back more than they pay out. But the parliamentary budget officer says, you know, that's not true. So, Brian, let me ask you, how much more will we be paying with this tax hike?
Depends on where you live, but you're in Alberta, so you'll be paying the most. I think for when you look at the fiscal and the economic impacts, including higher GST, that's something that, you know, the Trudeau government never puts into their equation. The GST is charged on top of everything that has the carbon tax added to it. Well, you're paying suddenly a lot more in GST. The economic impact that's taking away the ability to earn. It's bringing about, according to the PBO, lower incomes. Well, how does that factor in? In Alberta, if you're at the highest end, you're paying almost $9,000 more. But, you know, the government doesn't care about high income earners. They've just brought in new tax measures for them. And their view is always the rich don't pay enough. They need to pay more. They're fully involved in class warfare. But the claim was 8 out of 10 families will get back more than they pay. The Parliamentary Budget Office says it's only the lowest income people who get back more than they pay. And in the middle quintile, so they divided it up into quintiles, so 1/5 of income brackets divvied up. And the middle one, the third quintile, it ranges from, I believe, about $670 down east in extra payments to about $1,400 a year more. That's after the rebates, Hal. That's after the rebates. You're going to be paying that much more. In Ontario and Saskatchewan, I think it's about $1,100, but I believe it's $1,400 for a very middle-income family in Alberta.
Brian, while our Prime Minister is staying in $6,000 a night hotel rooms in London, England, members of the Canadian Armed Forces are being stuck with the bill for feeding themselves in Poland. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, armies run on two things, beans and bullets. That's the old saying, right? They need the bullets to fight and they need the beans to feed themselves and be able to go into battle. These forces are not going into battle right now, but they are training Ukrainian troops in Poland as part of our effort to support Ukraine. We didn't send over a mess kit with them. There's no cooks. They were told, look after things yourself. Go feed yourselves at restaurants. We'll pick up the bill. That would be fine, Hal, except they're not paying the bills. The soldiers have complained to one of my colleagues at Post Media about the fact that they're not getting reimbursed. It's taking months. Some soldiers going into debt. Imagine you're sent on a posting for months. Any of us, at a certain point, you've got your family bills back home, your wife, your kids, your husband, your kids, whatever. They're having to look after the regular bills, the mortgage, the grocery bill and all of that, and you're eating out at restaurants every single meal of the day, that's going to start adding up quickly. Plus, you've got the foreign exchange. They're submitting their bills, they're not getting reimbursed. The federal government has admitted that it's been slow on that. This goes back to something we've talked about so many times, basic government services not working. This is something that should be looked after quickly. Instead, as you say, $6,000 a night hotel room for the PM, huge catering bills for him. The soldiers, fend for yourself.
Maybe the soldiers are asking for more than the federal government can give. No, wait a minute.
Would seem that way.
Yeah. The Nova Scotia Mass Casualty Commission released their final report, Brian, into the April 20th massacre. There were a lot of recommendations for reforming the RCMP and some recommendations as well for gun control laws. Now, you believe the main points are fairly simple. What are they?
Main points would be 35 people knew that the gunman in this case, and I don't know if you have a policy against not naming them, many media organizations do, so I'll just call him the shooter. 35 different people knew that the shooter had illegal guns. He was reported to the police at least 3 times. They didn't investigate. This was all preventable. They also didn't do their job in vetting him to get a nexus card. Because of the failure by police, CBSA also failed in not vetting him properly, but they checked not deep enough, but they did check and they gave him a nexus card. That allowed him to go back and forth across the US border without much scrutiny. And that's how he smuggled his guns into the country. This was entirely preventable. And one of the, there's lots of arguments for reforming the RCMP. The RCMP is a multi-headed beast that doesn't work. They do municipal policing, whether it's in Alberta, British Columbia, Manitoba, or down east. They do national policing. They do anti-terrorism. They don't really know what they are. They've got so many different facets and they don't do them well. So sure, let's talk about reforming the RCMP, although I'm doubtful it'll happen. But the big thing that I think the Trudeau government is going to act on are the recommendations for more gun control that sound suspiciously like what the Trudeau government put forward in their amendment that they had to pull back. You remember we talked about that a few months ago when Indigenous groups, every opposition party, hunters, farmers, Carey Price of the Habs, all of them stood up and said, you're banning hunting guns to say you're saving us from gun crime. That's not the answer. It's almost verbatim what the Liberals put forward to what's in here. Think about that. This gunman had illegal guns. People complained to the police. The police didn't investigate. They allowed him to continue on. This event happened. And their answer isn't, you know what, we got to do a better job. It was, let's ban more things. Let's pass more laws that we won't enforce. And we'll have another one of these down the road and we'll say, let's do that all over again. It doesn't make sense.
Brian, lab-grown meat is not something we have in Canada just yet, but the American Food and Drug Administration has approved it. Meanwhile, Italy moved to ban it along with cricket or locust protein in their flour used for making breads and pastas. So let me ask you something. Could we see lab-grown meat or maybe cricket flour here in Canada anytime soon?
Oh, my gut reaction, you can tell, is to be grossed out by this, Al. I don't like this idea. Do we have to go the way of Italy just yet? I'm not sure. I'm a believer in freedom of choice. I'm a believer in individual autonomy. And so maybe some people want to eat this, but here's the thing. We need more information. And we're having regulators study these things and approve these things. But does the average person know what's going on? And how do they feel about it? And if it ends up on our store shelves, well, my big question will be, will we know that it's lab grown? I don't think that if you're going to allow something that's grown in a lab to be put on the shelf and called chicken, unless it was clucking like a live chicken at one point. But this lab stuff is not. Same with beef. If I'm going to go to the store, I should know whether it's lab grown or if this beef was once on a cow with 4 hooves mooing in a field. And those are the conversations we need to have. If we're going to allow this, will we have knowledge? Because I don't want to be eating this stuff. I'm not sure that I'm not a big fan of banning different things just because I don't like them. But I don't want to be eating this thinking I'm buying the real thing. And we're moving pretty quickly on this. I get why the Italians are doing it, but my worry is that it'll be loosey-goosey and we'll be having lab-grown goose instead of the stuff that flies in the air.
You know, Brian, I'm thinking of the locusts too. Locust protein in the flour for making bread. Locusts were used as a plague in the Bible. You know, it was one of the plagues that God sent upon the, I don't know. I don't get it either.
Doesn't sound good to me.
No. Political reporter and Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilly, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Healthy living is a quest for so many of us. So where do we go for advice? And how do we move through the distraction and clutter toward a more healthier lifestyle? Joining us today to chat about it is Josie Bosgra of Roots and Fruits Wellness. Josie has some tips on how to lead a healthier lifestyle. Now, some of you may remember Josie. She used to be a video journalist right here on Bridge City News. She was an interviewer when she covered a lot of the stories for us, but this morning she's the interviewee. Josie, welcome back to BCN.
Thanks so much. It's so special to be here.
Yeah. Josie, foundations for a new house are very important as the foundation for a healthy lifestyle. Let's talk about how food really impacts that foundation in our bodies.
Yeah, I mean, our cells are made up of essentially food that's broken down, right? So when we get down to the cellular level and we're looking at what our cells need in order to carry out their function, it all comes from food. And so they really are the building blocks to life. It's how we get energy. It's how we grow. So if we don't have food and the right food, whole foods, real foods, not packaged, processed, boxed foods, then it's going to affect every area of your life, from growth to energy to mental health and so much more.
Let's talk about how food actually impacts somebody's mood. What foods would you recommend to give somebody maybe a healthier, happier mood, as opposed to the foods that maybe will bring you down a little bit mentally?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there are some general foods that, I could suggest, but it's important to remember that everyone is different, like biochemically, we're all different. And so I can't think of any like specific studies off the top of my head, but I know for a fact that 90% or more of the body's serotonin, which is like your happy neurotransmitter that affects your mood for the better, is made in your intestinal bacteria, made by your intestinal bacteria. And so if your balance of bacteria in your gut is off, and different foods can affect that, but also eating the wrong foods for you could affect that, right? If you have intolerances and you hear a lot of people who are like, I'm lactose intolerant, but I'm eating ice cream anyway, and then they complain about it. So I think the number one thing would be to avoid foods that you know that you're sensitive to, so that your body isn't having that immune response and then in turn affecting your serotonin levels. Fermented foods are great because they're really healing to the gut. And then if we can restore that bacterial balance, we can restore that amount of serotonin, and that's going to make us happy. So that's kind of the gist of what I would say.
Is it really important to be tested for food sensitivities versus perhaps food allergies?
I do think it's important, especially when you have things going on, and food intolerances or sensitivities don't always manifest in like a very overtly gastrointestinal way. So for lots of people, it's bloating, it's diarrhea, whatever. But for lots of people, they might not draw the link between, oh, my hair's thinning, oh, I have arthritis, oh, I'm having this eczema or skin issues, chronic pain, chronic fatigue. Those can all be manifestations of food sensitivities too. So I think if you're having anything like that in your life, it is really important to get it checked out. And it might not be a forever thing. Lots of people can heal from the inside out and then be able to reintroduce foods, but others will choose not to because they just feel so energized and joyful afterwards, So I do think it's important for sure if you have something going on.
Josie, I want to talk to you about comfort food. Our team was just knocked out of the playoffs. I need some serious comfort food. I want that big tub, that big pail of ice cream right in front of me right now. You say that may not be the healthiest life choice. How about some healthier life choices when it comes to comfort food?
Yeah, I love treats. And I think the important thing with holistic nutrition is that we have to also enjoy life, and we kind of weigh those things and hold it all in tension. And so I think treats are okay, but what I try and teach clients is choosing better treats. Like there are lots of amazing lower sugar ice creams or dairy-free ice creams out there that you will enjoy. And you might not even miss the dairy. And so if you want that treat, choosing something like that, if you know you're sensitive to dairy or you're trying to watch the sugar, that would be a better option. That's still going to give you that comfort without hopefully the negative side effects. So all for treats, all for comfort food, just kind of doing it with better ingredients, essentially. You can make really yummy cakes and cookies with almond flour and stevia sweetened chocolate and different things like that.
Some of my bodybuilding friends, they talk about cheat meals. You know, they'll have a little bit of pizza, maybe a burger every now and then. Is it okay to have that cheat meal? Maybe if it's not processed foods, what do you think?
I struggle with the language. That's all. I struggle with the mindset towards cheating because when it comes to like eating well and maybe staying away from certain things, why are you doing it? Like, are you just depriving yourself and having this mentality of like, I can't eat that, I'm not going to eat that, and it's all negative versus like, I'm choosing to invest in my health and I look at all these awesome foods I get to enjoy. Then when you have that second mindset, having a treat or something that deviates a little bit from your ideals, you don't have to call it a cheat meal because our mindset is so important. It even affects our digestion, right? So if you're eating the healthiest meal ever but you're stressed out or in a funk, then that's going to affect your digestion versus if you're eating one of those cheat meals or something that deviates a little bit from your norm and you're doing it with gratitude and gratefulness, then it's probably not going to affect your body the same way.
Is home cooking still the best way to go? Not only as a couple, you can have some fun cooking the food, but you know exactly the ingredients that are going into what you're preparing, as opposed to when you go out to a restaurant, there might be super high sodium content and you don't know what else is going into it to make it so tasty.
Yeah, it's the best way to know what's going in your body for sure. Because even if you go to a restaurant and you order something healthy, you might not know what's in the sauce or what's in the marinade for the meat or where the vegetables came from. Did they get washed properly? All these things. So home cooking is definitely something to strive for. Like 90% of the time, everyone enjoys eating out once in a while, but I think home cooking is important not only for the nutritional value, but again with the digestion. Your digestion actually starts by enzymes being secreted in your body when you're cooking. So if you're not cooking, you're going through the drive-through, you skip that first step of digestion. And that's really important in order to break down your food to have adequate enzymes. So that's another reason to cook at home.
Now, I understand that you do a blood analysis. Josie, can you talk about what this does and why it's so important?
For sure. So blood analysis is one way that we look at the body and assess kind of the state of your immune system, of your digestion, of your internal organs and stuff. It's not diagnostic. I can't, say anything conclusive about you have this disease or anything like that. But what we do is we just look at the health of your red blood cells, the way your white blood cells are interacting with, pathogens in the body. And there's lots of things we can see in the blood: undigested food, heavy metal toxicity, chemical buildup. And so essentially it's just a tool that I use in my appointments with clients to see where they're at and know where to go in terms of how to personalize what they need with their nutrition and supplements.
I remember when my kids were younger, we took them to the zoo all the time, and we went to see the chimpanzees at the zoo, and I was going to feed them a banana, and then the staff said, no, they're on a diet right now, no bananas whatsoever. I'm like, how can you not have monkeys and no bananas, right? So are there certain high sugary foods, even natural sugars, that perhaps we should stay away from when it comes to overall health?
I think, again, it depends on the person. So some people would be wise to stay away from all sugars, including natural ones. But most people can handle that. There's actually people who are sensitive to fruit sugar. And so they should for sure stay away from those. Obviously, if you're having blood sugar issues, being mindful of when you're eating sugar and what you're pairing it with, even if it is a healthy sugar, right, that can still spike your blood sugars. And so it does depend on the person. The majority of healthy, young, middle-aged people can handle fruit. Fruit is not bad for you, but if something is, I really love this ancient proverb. It's goes somewhere along the lines of one man's medicine is another man's poison. And so just to keep that in mind, a banana might be super nutritious for you and be really bad for me. So, yeah.
Let's talk about good fats versus bad fats as well. Because I've heard nutritionists in the past talk about some good fats when it comes to the legumes, a lot of the nuts that we take, and then bad fats, of course, perhaps with some of the animal fat or the fat from burgers. What are your thoughts when it comes to good versus bad fats?
Yeah, I would definitely stay away from any like fried foods, something like chips or French fries, stuff like that should be, very much in moderation because even when I look at cells under the microscope, this is a really cool example. That outside of your cell, the circle is actually made up of essential fatty acids, and those are found in healthy good fats. So things like coconut, avocado, nuts, seeds, olives, olive oil. Um, yeah, even animal protein has essential fatty acids and amino acids in there, as long as I think we talked about it in a previous interview, blood typing and stuff. So as long as you can handle animal protein, then that can be a good, actually healthy source of fat if you're getting a high quality meat in there. The one that's a little dicey would be pork. Lots of people have an immune response to pork, so I wouldn't consider that a healthy fat in my practice. But other than that, animal fats should be okay for most people too.
That's good because I love the animal fat on my pork chops and my steaks, especially when I throw them on the barbecue. It's so tasty. And we're barbecue season now, Joe, so this is a good thing. Listen, I wanted to ask you about cleanses. There seems to be a lot of negatives and positives, a lot of comments when it comes to cleanses. Are cleanses the way to go? Are they effective?
Well, good thing you asked me right now because we're just entering springtime, and this transition to spring is actually the best time to do cleanse. What I would say about cleanses is it would be wise to work with someone like myself or someone else who's a nutrition professional to help kind of tailor a cleanse towards what you need. Just jumping on Google and finding some 40-day juice cleanse is probably not wise because that can have more detrimental effects than maybe positive ones. For some people, it might work out, but I think it's really wise to figure out what you need. Some people need to do a parasite cleanse. They have parasites. Some people need a heavy metal cleanse. Some people need more of like a bowel cleanse. So figuring out what you need, that would be my first thing. And then second thing would be it doesn't always need to be so drastic because the way our bodies were designed, we actually have a detoxification system built in. So sometimes it's just about giving your body a break from excess, things we've already been talking about, unhealthy fats, unhealthy foods, and then letting your body actually do the cleansing and filling that gap with lots of vegetables, lots of water, stuff like that.
And when you say heavy metal cleanse, you're thinking more country music and pop as opposed to heavy metal? Oh,
That's a good one.
Now, Josie, if someone feels the bad food choices have been building up in their system over the years, what can they really do to make some healthier life choices?
Yeah, I mean, as we just talked about, the body's natural ability to cleanse itself is incredible, but you actually need to give it the right conditions to do so. And so I would say, again, working with someone who can help you make those decisions for your body. And it's really a lifelong learning about each of our bodies. And it can change from season to season too, what foods will build up in the system and which foods will be okay for a person. I think an easy way to do that would be to eat more vegetables. Vegetables are naturally cleansing. They're going to move stuff out of, cellular debris out of your body and bowel, backed up poops in there out of your body. So if you're trying to get rid of kind of lots of years of bad choices, then just upping your vegetable intake is a great way. Another thing, which isn't really my realm, but is really important to talk about, is exercise. And so pairing exercise with good nutrition is going to be one great way to steer your ship in the right direction.
I'm glad you actually brought that up because a lot of times we like to go for walks after a nice healthy meal. We have a nice dinner. Is there a certain period of time where we should maybe let the food settle a little bit first before we work out or go for a long walk or maybe even go for a swim? I remember our parents used to say when we were kids, wait at least a half an hour before you go swimming, after you've done eating.
I would say a gentle light walk after dinner should be okay. You're still in a calm spot. I wouldn't go for a run right after because you're operating in two different nervous system functions essentially, and one is rest and digest and one is fight or flight. And so if you're going for a leisurely walk, it actually can be good for your digestion. It can help balance your blood sugar. That would be good. In terms of the swimming and more vigorous exercise, I would definitely wait an hour or two to do that. You'll probably feel better anyway and have a better workout.
I've noticed with certain foods as well, especially when it comes to meats, that I feel very lethargic. Not a lot of energy afterwards, especially when it comes to hamburger and, of course, with turkey around Thanksgiving, the tryptophan, I guess, in your system. Are there a lot of foods that are like that, very similar, that just kind of zaps your energy?
Yeah, for different reasons though. I mean, you already mentioned the tryptophan in turkey, so that's like a good, healthy, nutritious food that makes you a little sleepy. But then there's the flip side when, again, some of these intolerances can contribute to fatigue. So if you're eating things that don't jive with your body continually, then you're not going to get energy from it. Your body isn't going to break down the nutrients and use them. Your body's going to stress out about the fact that you ate it, essentially, and have an immune response. And so it's actually working instead of receiving nutrients. So that would be one thing to explore if you feel chronically fatigued, is food sensitivities and healing the gut.
You know, I've seen a lot of advertising as well on social media about fasting. You know, fasting seems to be kind of a craze right now, very popular. What are your thoughts on fasting for our bodies?
That's a good topic. I could have a whole interview on that. But the long and the short of it is it's good for some people, particularly middle-aged men, I would say might thrive more with the intermittent fasting type thing that's going on. Women, it's not really something I would be a big fan of, just because the man has a hormone cycle of 24 hours, right? It's the same every day. It fluctuates throughout the day a little bit, but then it's the same. So they can kind of handle that. But for a woman, your hormones are different every single day of the month. And so if you fast, whether it's like a full day fast once a month or the intermittent fasting, that can affect your hormones greatly by messing with your cortisol levels. And I don't think it's super wise. Again, if it's for spiritual reasons or something like that, then that's completely different. Because like there might be some benefits to that for your spirit, but from a health standpoint, not my favorite thing for women. For men, it can be super effective, and that's kind of all I'll say on that.
Josie, people want to know more about your services and how to lead a healthier lifestyle. How can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, my website is rootsandfruitswellness.com. All the info should be on there in terms of social media, phone number, email, and I'd love to meet with anyone that wants help.
Such a great name for a business. Roots and Fruits Wellness, Josie Bosgra, thanks so much for joining us here today from Lethbridge.
Thank you.
On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and thanks for watching.